What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Dylan Talks Tone. Today, we're going to continue in our series about kind of semi-annual guitar maintenance. And today, we are going to focus on Les Paul style guitars. So, I have a Gibson Les Paul here, but this will apply, what we're doing today will apply to a bunch of different guitars. 335 style guitars, SG style guitars, a lot of guitars like that. And of course, any of your other, the foreign copies of these guitars will also be, obviously Epiphones, but all your, a lot of your Harley Bentons and a lot of your Sires, there's going to be a bunch of different brands that will kind of mimic this. And so you'll be able to use a lot of what we see here today. There will be some things that are specific to Gibson, but we will notate those as we go. So we're going to do a kind of polish up, clean up, and a setup on my Les Paul / November Burst. Before we get going, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and the like button if you like guitar stuff, because that's what we do every day of the week. Also, I would like to say thank you to all my Patreon supporters and my YouTube supporters who make videos like this possible. Gibson did not give me this guitar, I had to buy it, so Patreon helps us do those things, as well as some of the other tools and various things that we will use today so that you can do a very good, accurate setup on your guitar. And I'm hoping that this video will help you be able to do that on your stuff. This is not really a setup from scratch, new build sort of thing. This is, you've been playing this guitar for a while, the weather has changed a little bit, you got to make some adjustments. Kind of semi-annual maintenance that we do on a guitar that we probably already own, or this could be something that you kind of go over that guitar just right after you bought it, and kind of, how you get a new guitar and you kind of want to go over it with your own, clean it with your own cloth sort of thing. That's kind of what we're doing here, and it will apply to your instrument as well. So let's jump straight in. First things first, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get the strings off of this guitar, and we are going to give the frets a quick polish, which is something that I always like to do with my Lizard Spit polishing kit. We're going to give the fretboard a quick clean and oil, and then we will get strings back on it and we will get on to the setup itself. When you take the strings off of a Gibson Les Paul or any kind of guitar with the stop bar and the stop bar tailpiece sort of situation, when we slack the strings and take the strings off, this is going to fall out. Now, some Epiphones have little clips in the tailpiece right here, and it will keep it from falling out. But just be aware that your guitar may not have those little clips, and you don't want it to fall down on the top of your guitar. So I'm going to go ahead and just get the strings off of this thing, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I've got the strings broken, and here's what I'm talking about. This kind of just slides right off. And for now, don't touch any of this situation. In fact, actually, let's just say this. To save your finish on your guitar, because we're going to be moving the guitar around a little bit, you might want to lift this off and just kind of set it to the side, but don't touch these setting screws yet. Don't mess with any of that. The other thing is, take note to the orientation of the bridge. And what I mean by that is, you see how the intonation screws are on this side? Make sure that whatever side they're on your guitar, some foreign ones have them backwards the other way, it doesn't matter. But whatever way they are, make sure that you take note of that so that you don't put the bridge on backwards when you put the bridge back on. So take this off, set it aside, and take this off and set it aside, and keep your string scraps off to the side as well, because I'm going to show you what we're going to do with those and put those to good use in just a little bit. Now, this is a Lizard Spit product that you may have not seen in the past. You have probably not seen me use it yet. This is vintage instrument polish made by Lizard Spit. Now, this product is for nitrocellulose lacquer finishes, which this Gibson has. Now, your guitar may not, so I would use the pink Lizard Spit polish on your guitar if you have a urethane finish. But if you have a nitrocellulose finish, use this one. If your guitar has relicking or any kind of checking or anything, I would not recommend using this because it'll get kind of stuck in all the little cracks. But if you've got a nice nitrocellulose finish like this, then polish your guitar with it, and you'll find that some of the oxidation and the little hazing that happens with nitrocellulose, you will be able to clean up with this. Also, I have a little scratch right here and some other little smudges on the back of this guitar just because of normal wear and tear that I'm going to try to clean up with this particular polish right now, and we'll see what happens. Excellent. That actually worked rather well. I had a little scratch right here and a little scratch right here, and those polished right out. So I'm going to just go ahead and use the same spot on my rag and do underneath where the strings would go so that I don't have to worry about that later. And just a couple of little hard to reach places. You know, once the strings are on, it's tough. Alright, so we'll polish the rest of it up later. But that stuff's pretty awesome. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you have a nitrocellulose finish. If you don't have a nitrocellulose finish, I'll leave the other guitar polish that we use. It's the pink liquid that comes in a pink, it's a clear bottle, but it's a pink liquid. Do not use car wax on your guitar, especially a nitrocellulose finish, because it has silicone in it. We do not have silicone in the shop at all, because once you contaminate a surface with silicone, it is very difficult to get it off. And it does weird things. Silicone-based polishes never actually dry. They always stay oily. And so what will happen is it will attract more dust, and it will also, this is why when you use a spray wax on your car, you go outside and it's dusty the very next hour, or pollen sticks to it, because it's an oily thing and contaminants stick to it. Your guitar will end up scratching more, it will end up hazing more. So don't use silicone, and also you don't want it around anything that could ever need to be repaired in the future. So especially nitrocellulose finishes, I would only use this stuff right here, or any non-silicone based polish. And the same thing with a urethane finish, I would use any non-silicone based polish. So don't use furniture polish, don't use car wax spray, you know, turtle wax easy shine stuff or anything like that, because that's all silicone based, and you'll end up with just attracting a lot more contaminants to your guitar. And let's see, normally I would say what we would do now is I would grab our little expansion pack of Lizard's Bit polishing pads. Well, you know what, let's just do it. I was going to say, I recently did this on this guitar, and so they're not bad, but there's a couple in here we're going to polish up. This will just remove any oxidation. Our third and final product, which is our Lizard's Bit fretboard oil. This is going to clean up any contaminants from when we polished our frets, and any other contaminants from your finger goo, because you have gooey fingers. We all have gooey fingers when we play our guitar. And this will clean all that up. Now, this does not hydrate the board. Obviously, that has to do with the humidity in your house. So make sure you keep your humidity between about 40 and 60%, and that will keep your playing surface in nice, clean condition. Now, one of the things we don't have to do on this guitar is play with fret ends, because these have the nubs, the little binding nubs over the fret ends, and so they should be pretty well captured by that. So we don't have any sharp fret ends to deal with. Now, if you do have sharp fret ends, you can refer to our other videos on this. I'll put a little gray box up here, and I'll refer to another video where we show you how to use the fret end files so that you can clean up those little sharp fret ends. So on an Epiphone, this may be necessary, or on some of the Les Paul copies, this may be necessary. But since this is a proper Les Paul, we don't need to worry about it, because we have the bound neck with nubs. So if you've never worked on a Les Paul style guitar before with the stop bar and tailpiece, I'm going to give you a couple of pointers here. Take your high E and your low E and put those through your stop bar tailpiece first. Okay? like so. Then take your bridge and set him back on there, recalling the orientation of the saddles so that they're not backwards. And then you take it like this with both strings in hand and put your stop bar tailpiece in. And on your high E and your low E, if you kind of hold it like this and string those up to the tuners first, then that will keep this from falling onto the guitar because you'll have one on either end, and it'll just keep everything in place for the rest of the stringing of the guitar, if that makes sense. And then you don't have to worry about it falling back off. Unless you have one of those cool Epiphones with the little capture springs in them, then you don't have to worry about this, but on a lot of other guitars you do. Okay, now that we've got the strings on the guitar, what we want to do, before we tighten everything up, normally, I would tell you to go ahead and tune this whole thing to pitch, and we'll set the neck relief first. However, before we get a lot of tension on the guitar, what I like to do is, if you have had, this is where we've got our little string leftover pieces. If you have had any tuning stability issues up to this point with your guitar, and this applies to any guitar actually, I should have mentioned it in other videos, but sometimes it's just because you've got junk built up in your string grooves up here. If a Les Paul nut is cut properly, like this one is, with the angles cut in there correctly and everything looks really nice, you're not going to really have tuning stability issues. That's sort of a made up, it's like a couple people have that problem because their guitars aren't set up correctly, and then everybody thinks that no Gibson stays in tune. But if it's set up correctly, it will. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to tour with them like they do. So if you have issues, this is where I keep my old strings around. So let's say I have a situation where this string's not staying in tune very well, or it feels a little draggy, or something funky's going on. Then what I do is I'll just pull the string out of the way, and I'll take the old string that goes in that slot. Actually, that's not it. Oh, I got the wrong one. We'll use the A string. Pop the string out, and I'll take my old A string, and I'll just kind of go in there like that, and just clean it out. Just make sure there's no junk in there. Just kind of like you're flossing your teeth. Don't bear down on it. You don't want to change the shape of anything. You just want to clean it out. And then you could do the same thing with your unwound strings. If you feel like you need a little roughness on your strings, take your string and just roll it on the sidewalk a little bit, and it'll get a little rough, and you can use it sort of as a nut file if you do not have the cool StewMac nut files, because some folks don't have those. And so, I use the StewMac nut files to do mine, but I don't need to do this guitar, so it's fine. But anyway, there you go. So let's go ahead and get this thing tuned up to pitch, and we will run through the setup. Okay, now that the guitar is tuned to pitch, we want to check our neck relief very first. That is the most important thing, because that establishes all other measurements that we're going to do with this guitar. So I like to fret the first fret and fret the last fret where the body meets the neck. So it'll be right here on a Les Paul. And then go about halfway in between, which is going to put us right about here, and measure this distance. Now, I like this to be basically almost flat. That's how I like my guitars set up. I'm going to do a video about why I think it's fine. This is something new to me, actually. I learned this from someone else. But I think it's fine to set your guitar up completely flat with no neck relief. And we're going to do a video specifically on that because there's a lot of myth surrounding that. So we're going to do a video on that soon. But basically what we want to do is just make sure that this is set correctly. Set it to the specs that your guitar manufacturer recommends. A good rule of thumb is about 5/1000ths of an inch if you want a little bit of neck relief in there. For those of you that do not use thousandths of an inch, you can very easily, instead of getting in the comments and complaining that I don't know what the metric measurement is, put it into the Googles and it'll give you the conversion. 5/1000ths of an inch. That's what I like to go for. If this is too closed up and it's completely flat and we do not have any gap here and the neck is bent backwards, then we will take our truss rod cover off and we'll just give it a little bit of a loosen, and that will relax the neck and that will bring the center of it down. If we do this measurement and it is more than we like to have, then we will put our truss rod wrench in here and we will tighten it up, and that will bring the center of the neck up. Now, when we do that, we only want to do about 1/8 of a turn. Remember, this is all about maintenance. Your guitar was probably playing pretty well as it is now, and then you just kind of get a little rattle. Typically, when the humidity raises, the neck relief will go away. When it dries out, the neck will shrink, and it will go the other way. But typically it's about 1/8 of a turn to 1/4 of a turn at the very most. If you have to move more than that, then we have other issues with the guitar. It's very important at this point, though, to make sure that you have the guitar tuned to the pitch that you're going to play in. Doesn't matter what pitch it is, but the pitch that you're going to play the guitar in with the string weight that you're going to have on it, because that's a tension measurement. So we want the tension to be right as we make that adjustment. All right. The next thing I like to do is make sure that we don't have any worn out nut slots. The way I like to do that is I like to fret the 3rd fret and then just make sure that we have the same amount of light coming through the 1st fret all the way across. Now, this isn't a specific setup. This is just making sure that we've not worn out any one nut slot. If you have more than a couple of guitars, chances are you'll go years and years and years without having this issue. So what I like to do is just fret the 1st fret, 3rd fret I mean, just make sure there's some daylight underneath that 1st one. And you'll never really have a nut buzz because it'll be high enough. That's just kind of a quick check. If you've got one that's too low, then you'll know that you need to replace your nut. If you've got one that's way, way high, chances are you've already been playing it like that and it's totally fine. But we can do a specific video on nut adjustment if you like. We've got one actually out there already. But we can make another one. It's cool too. All right, next thing we need to do is set the height of our saddles. Now, setting the height of the saddles is not that big a deal. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to measure the string height at the 12th fret, and we're going to set it for whatever our preference is. We have our cool digital gauge here that is at StewMac, and you can buy one of these. I'll leave a link to it in the description, or you can just use feeler gauges underneath here. However, a lot of folks have said, well, I can do just as good of a job. But I don't know if you've noticed that the mean age, as in the average age of a guitar player, is pretty high now. And through doing a lot of guitar classes and teaching folks how to wind pickups and how to do various things guitar related over the last decade or so, I've noticed that folks who do things with guitars often cannot see as well as they think they can. And they also are not as steady with their hands as they think they are, especially as they get older. This is a much more consistent way to measure stuff. So you put this on here. Like so. I'm showing you from the front. You turn it on, you zero it, and then you press it down. And that gives you your height in thousandths of an inch or millimeters, depending on where you live in the world. And you can now adjust your string height. Now on a Les Paul, you only really need to do the high E and the low E because that's all you can really adjust. And you just use your thumb wheels down here to adjust it. Now, what if you have an import guitar that maybe, because I've seen this many times, we've got a 12-inch radius here, and this bridge is actually made to be 12-inch radius, okay? But sometimes they don't match. And sometimes the saddle heights will be too high on various guitars, and you'll need to make adjustments to the individual saddle heights, but you can't really do that with one of these bridges. So here's what you have to do. You have to measure across this and set the lowest one of these saddles to the height that you want. And then that will make probably the ones in the middle too high if the radius is not matched to your guitar. Then you'll have to file the high ones down to the height that you want. But make sure that you set the low outside ones first because you can't put material back onto a saddle. So what you would do is you would set the high E and the low E to whatever height you wanted, and then you would check the middles to make sure that they match. And if you've got one that's way too high because of a cheap casting or because a mismatched part, if you've got one that's way too high, just file that one down to the same saddle height of the other strings, and that will take care of the issue for you. Do not use your good fret files or your saddle or your nut files for this though, because it will kind of screw up some nut files. Okay, at this point, there's another thing that we need to talk about. You have probably noticed by now that I have not top wrapped this bridge, and that is because top wrapping, the perceived benefits of it. We just did a video about this actually last night on our YouTube channel, or last week on our YouTube channel. And we've got a bunch of videos about it. In fact, I made it into a Gibson magazine about this whole top wrapping situation. The benefits of it are so slight, and the guitar was not actually designed to top wrap. Okay, so the only reason people really top wrap is because they're kind of like the same kind of people that say that like don't have TVs in 2024, and it's just so that they can be proud of the fact that they don't have a television. There's no real benefit to not having a television in 2024, but they just want to say that they do. Like, I don't have a TV. I haven't watched TV in years. It's just those kind of people, I think, that top wrap. And then people are just like, oh, that's so weird. You don't have a TV in 2024. I'm totally kidding. It's literally, you can do whatever you want. It's not that big a deal. I don't like to do it because it scratches up my stuff, and the perceived benefit of it is very, very minimal. So now, the benefits of it are that people have a perceived slinkier feeling because this angle is less acute when you top wrap. You can achieve the same thing by just doing how Gibson intended it in the first place and just raise your tailpiece up. Now, a lot of folks will say, but Sustain, bro. Like, oh, by the way, Sustain Brothers Club t-shirts are available on the website, link below. But people will be like, Sustain, bro, you totally have to like crank that thing down, and then the back of the string hits the back of the bridge, blah, blah, blah. No. The sustain doesn't come from how tight the bridge is. The tension on the threads is still the same, whether you have it tightened all the way down or whether you have it loosened up. Physics says that there is no more energy going into this body with it here or down. It's just completely a fallacy, okay? The other thing is you've heard people talk about bending Les Paul bridges. That's because when they tighten the thing all the way down, it really makes this angle acute, and it puts way more force on the middle of this bridge, and certain old school bridges will bend in the middle if you do that. And people will say, well, yeah, well, the studs will pull out of the guitar or you'll see them angled. There are other setup issues if you have that problem. More modern guitars will not have this issue. This has been designed to be raised and lowered. Just raise and lower it like a normal human being who has a television in 2024. End of story. It's not that complicated. If you want to experiment with top wrapping, that's cool. Just know that you're going to ruin this bridge piece or this tailpiece because it's going to scratch it all up, and it's whatever. But if you want to be like Joe Bonamassa or you don't have a television, then go ahead and top wrap. It's no big deal. Okay, let's go ahead and set intonation on this guitar. Okay, so we're going to tackle the ghost that is intonation setting for many people, but I'm going to give you my easy trick, and it's going to be awesome. First of all, tune the guitar completely to pitch, exact as you can get. And then the other thing is, at this point, all the other adjustments should be made. We don't, at this point, want to make any adjustments that will change the tension or the length of the strings, and any other adjustment would do that. So if we adjusted the truss rod at this point, that'll change the length of the scale by thousandths of an inch or thousandths of a millimeter, depending on where you live. If we change the saddle height, that will change everything too. So we do not want to do any of those adjustments. We want all of that to be done before we do our intonation. Now we want to tune the guitar with the best tuner that we own. I'm using this Peterson Strobo Plus tuner that I love, and I like it because it's going to give you a visual as we look at this. So make sure that we set these strings almost exactly to pitch as best we can at this point. This is really, really important. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to fret the 12th fret. And if the tuner goes this way, like the tuner goes this way, then we're going to take our saddle screw and we're going to move the saddle this way. If the tuner goes this way, right, the needle moves this way, then the saddle needs to go that way. And then we retune as accurately as possible and we try it again. Fortunately, this is pretty good. Okay, so on our A string now, see how it's kind of drifting that way? So we need to adjust that. We need to move the saddle this way. So we go in here, and on these saddles we actually tighten, and now we're good. Let's check our low E. That one's drifting a little bit that way too. So let's go ahead and tighten this one. Drift the saddle that way just a little bit. Now that changes the tuning of the string, so we need to make sure that we tune it again as accurately as possible. And now it holds. Cool. Let's go ahead and plug this thing in and check our pickup heights. Okay, so what I like to do to check my pickup height is basically just fret the last fret, make sure it's not going to hit. Now, on some Les Pauls and Les Paul copies, this height is going to vary a lot because of how the architecture of the guitar is. But on a proper Les Paul, usually the pickup height ends up being just above the plastic ring. And then basically what I do is I just listen to it and decide if I like it or not. And, you know, of course, not in a video. I'll probably spend more time with this, playing it, different outputs, different amp settings, different stuff like that, and just get it where I want it. And then what I'll typically do is make sure that the bridge to neck balance is correct and raise and lower accordingly. And for all you sustain bros out there, the raised tailpiece obviously has not hurt anything whatsoever. So, there you go. That's it. Les Pauls are cool. And Les Paul style guitars are cool. So, you know, there's going to be a few things that are application specific to your Les Paul style guitar if it's not an actual Les Paul. Nibs on the ends of the frets, and the fret end dressing that you may have to do, as well as how you handle your tailpiece and your saddles, because that right there, especially on import guitars, can vary just a little bit. Hopefully the tips that we gave you help you out and you get a good setup on your guitar for your, you know, semi-annual maintenance. I guess next week we're going to do let's do a floating tremolo next week. So we will use our PRS Fiore, and I will give you some pointers on how to make sure that that is correct, and it'll apply loosely to Floyd's and various other things when it comes to setting a floating tremolo, you know, like a double action up and down tremolo. So we'll give you some pointers on that. So we'll do the Fiore next week. Thanks for hanging out, you guys. This has been super fun. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell and do all the things that you do. Check out Dylan Talks Tone for your pickup needs and anything else you might need. I'll leave a link to everything we used in the description so that you can check that stuff out. It does help out the channel. And most importantly, because this is a guitar that you care about, the stuff that we use in this video is not expensive, but it does help you have a really nice result without cutting corners and without spending a lot of money. So I hope that you appreciate those things as well as I do. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next video.